Hearing Oasis for the first time, I think just changed everything. It was a very kind of exciting time to be growing up, I think, with all this kind of guitar music coming out and feeling like, you know, you could just pick up a guitar and learn it and play along with this stuff. It was like a sort of bomb exploding in my head of just excitement, and that just set me off to, you know, a life of trying to be in music and try and be as close to music as possible. You know, it was the first thing that made me pick up a guitar and start playing, really. And I'm sure I've picked up lots of influences from it, and I'm sure I've picked up, you know, lots of things that they were influenced by. But from there, like anything really, it was kind of the start of a process, and it was going from there to, you know, to, I don't know, the Manics and Radiohead and, you know, stuff that was, from a guitar perspective, a lot harder to play and a lot more interesting, I think, in terms of the writing and the kind of the techniques, as well as some, you know, sort of straight ahead sort of just amazing guitar playing like John Squire and yeah, John Squire, Johnny Greenwood really were the two that I think I grew up idolising and trying to sound like and failing repeatedly. I think the reason I started using these on stage was we actually had a concert for the Proms in 2022 in the summer, and because we're playing with an orchestra, we didn't need all of our kind of bells and whistles, all the electronics. You know, if you can't cover it with a symphony orchestra, then you don't need to cover it, basically. You know, you don't need me pressing a few keys on a keyboard to try and imitate some kind of sound. So using the breadth and range of the texture of the orchestra and the dynamic range of the orchestra meant that I just wanted to strip my setup back and have it be super simple. So I thought, you know, I don't need 500 amp models for this gig. I just need one good sounding amp, you know, stick it in stereo, get some delays and reverbs going into it, but nothing too fancy. And that's why, you know, I ended up using the Victory amps on that gig as the first gig that I'd used it on, and just loved it so much. You know, loved the kind of the grit and the responsiveness and just the feel of playing into it and the sound of it. I just thought, why haven't I been doing this for, you know, for years? So then I had to go back and reprogram pretty much our entire live set for using with amps rather than just with modelers, which was a fair amount of work. But yeah, we took them out with this in autumn on our tour and sounded great. I really felt the difference playing wise and just sound wise and feel wise is such a big part of an amp, and that really kind of, it was just like a virtuous feedback loop really. I kind of tend to set it so I play through the clean channel and I've got the gain probably up at about 2 o'clock, I think. And so that's with a single coil, you probably, you know, 60-70% clean, but when you push it, you can get a bit of grit and a bit of breakup. I think where I love amps, and I think where I kind of define whether an amp works for me or not, is in that realm of breakup, because you can do so much else with pedals, you can do so much else with modeling, but the actual physical sound of a kind of breakup of valve distortion in an amplifier, it's just such a complex and kind of reactive, expressive sound that I think there's nothing else really quite like it, certainly to play into. So I kind of try and get it in that sweet spot and then sort of play around that. Obviously, when you put humbuckers into it, you're looking at a more kind of saturated sound in general. But yeah, sort of around about 2 o'clock and just living in between sort of just a bit clean, but into sort of more full sort of grit sounds as well. I think my approach to amps is very different in the studio and on stage. I think in the studio it's great to have a lot of options, it's great to be able to kind of tinker, it's great to be able to really kind of get into the nitty gritty and get very, very nerdy about it. You know, we will spend hours on setups and hours on trying to get a sound right. And then live, you know, you want something that's kind of transparent and steady enough and reliable enough and sonically powerful and interesting enough to kind of convey the emotion that you're trying to convey in a live sort of arena, not a literal arena. But so you kind of, to be able to combine both of those things in one amp is quite a rare thing, I think. And Victory sent over the Superjack, you know, about a year ago, I think, and instantly just the sheer amount of flexibility with it, the kind of the send return loop, the 2 channels, the different options on each one, the different voicings. It's just really right up my street, and it lends itself equally well to kind of being a more straight up live pedal kind of based platform, or being able to use it in the studio and kind of really, spend ages just sort of tinkering with it, moving mics around and getting really very geeky, which will be no surprise to people watching this that's what I like to do. I've got 2 Super Jacks playing live, and they're both set on the 30 watt mode actually rather than the 100, because I had to strike a bargain with our sound engineer somehow to let us go back to playing amps on stage. And yeah, I've got quite a lot up front of it. I've got a lot of analog distortion, I've got compression, got fuzz, all the stuff that you'd want kind of in that world ahead of an amp, and then effects send and return in stereo, 1 to each amp from the sort of the switcher board into it, and then back out into just a reverb, an H9 pedal, a delay, the Boss DD500, and the Infinity Looper, which kind of does a lot of the looping of our sort of layered sounds live. So it's kind of the best of both worlds really. It's sort of being able to be confident enough that it's going to take all that stuff well ahead of the amp, and then also deal well with the kind of stuff that you want to preserve a bit more clarity with, like the delay and the reverb after it. And I've been really pleased with how it works and how responsive it is. It kind of reminded me just how much more musical of an experience it is playing through an amp rather than through a modeler. I love modelers and I think they're fantastic, but I think what they give you is a very good snapshot of a particular set of characteristics. And if you want to sort of hit a bigger window of expressivity, I've really just found going back to playing an amp live just liberating in that respect. I think I wouldn't, just because my playing style and the kind of sounds that I like, I wouldn't have gravitated towards one of the sort of the high gain amps. That kind of rules out the heavier stuff. And from there, it's kind of really what kind of general character you're after, and what are the kind of, if you're after the capability to tinker, what are the kind of tinkerable options? And I liked some of the stuff from the other models. I like the kind of the built-in tremolo on some, but I think it was having the kind of the switchable crunch. The FX send and return is a massive thing for me, especially live, and just to kind of have, it's a kind of a perfect blend really between simplicity, like it's not a hard amp to understand, but also it has the complexity to have those kind of different levels of sound and character to it. Do mean that you get enough versatility from it in a studio environment that really make it a really useful tool to have there as well. So it just sits across both those worlds, live and studio, really well. I'm not ruling out getting any others in the future, but this is the one that I think kind of suits me best playing style wise, and I just instantly kind of gravitated towards. That's not a cheeky attempt for more blagging, by the way. That's just, it's probably true anyway.